Welcome back. This is Chapter 13, Lucky 13. It's also the last chapter in the book, so I guess that does make it lucky, doesn't it? This is supposed to be a chapter about data modeling, Power Pivot, and Power View. Those are Excel features that are designed to do business intelligence. The problem is that most of you won't be able to actually install the Power View, Power Pivot feature. It's only available on the enterprise versions of Excel, so unless you're like in a business, you're not going to be able to do it. Oddly enough, it is a free add-on to Excel 2010, but if you're running the 2013 or 16 version, you have to have a level of Excel which is much, much greater than what you'd ever expect to have at home. Therefore, I'm planning on doing off-book an awful lot this chapter. We're gonna go through some stuff in the book, and then we're gonna put the book down and start doing some other stuff. Okay. So let's start with the objectives on page 653. So the first one says, understand the basics of dashboard design. Yep, we're going to do an awful lot of that since dashboards are kind of what the business intelligence people do a lot of. Explore new data models. No, I'm not going to do that. Create advanced data models using Power Pivot. No. Create pivot tables. No. Use apps for business. No. Prepare dashboard for production. Yeah, we're going to do that, but not the way they think. And generate visual reports with Power View. No, we're not going to do that either. So only a tiny, tiny portion of this chapter is going to be stuff that's in the book. Okay. So on page 654, they finally talk about what business intelligence is all about. You know, everyone has heard of, big data, right? So what happens is, I'm a businessman and I'm drowning in data, and I need a technique that's going to, filter it all out and present it in a way that I can just kind of glance away and look at it and go, aha. And the way businesses that I've been dealing with do it is sort of like, the red, amber, green kind of a scenario where you just glance, everything is green, and you go, okay, good, and you move on about your business. And if something pops up yellow, you go, hey, what's going on? Then you kind of drill down, so to speak. So it's supposed to be a visual tool for people. Now, in the old days, it was all about, corporate executives, like the CEO would have this business intelligence thing. I built one time that was a toolbar at the bottom of Windows. It was about twice as thick as the standard menu bar across the bottom. So essentially, instead of being just this thick right here, it had another one about right there. It took up about that much space. And it had a whole bunch of little key indicators. Okay, and it just stayed at the bottom of this guy's screen the entire time the machine was on. Okay, cool. Now, of course, practically anyone can benefit from being able to succinctly find out what it is you're trying to do. What these key indicators are for your business. There's a cool little thing here. They have a figure 1 on page 654, and it's all about what vendors and companies. Oh, for goodness sakes! Come on, here, boy. Okay, that was tough. If you were to poll people, somebody did a survey and said, what do you need out of a dashboard? And and a lot of this is kind of business speak, so just bear with me. Alignment of strategies and activities. Make sure that the things that we're measuring are the things that are important. Improve timeliness and accuracy of decisions. Yes, I need to make a decision, and I need good data, and it's got to be timely, it's got to be accurate. Need for one view of the business, and I assume that the typo, that's supposed to be data, and the need for data-driven decisions, and then need to gain visibility into key processes, the biggest one. And so they talk about this technique as a whole, and then they kind of drill down a little bit further, and they talk about how you can use visual indicators to help you in your business. We use it in a system called Balanced Scorecard. Perhaps you've heard that. We did Six Sigma. We did Lean Six Sigma. And so it really is a lot more than just the CEO of the company now, because anyone can if my boss is telling me, oh, I've got a meter on my screen that tells me what the production numbers are. Okay, don't you think I would want that same meter on my screen? Right? If I'm being held to that standard, don't you think I'd want to have that on there? And then it kind of goes downhill. My employees are going to say, whoa, the boss and the boss's boss are very important about this thing. Maybe I ought to put that on the corner of my screen. You see how it kind of snowballs down. Okay. They talk about some of the features of a good visual dashboard. And one way of thinking about it, there's a whole list there in the book, but what they really talk about is a single screen. If I have to move through and see a bunch of stuff, I've lost them. It's supposed to be just a glancing view, so to speak. It all has to be on one page. It has to be visible. Okay. It's got to be interactive, which means if I see something going on, I want to click on something and then have it automatically launch additional detail. So it's high-level summary, but when I click on it, I'm going to be able to go in and get more detail. Focused on whatever the problem is or whatever the decision I'm trying to make. So if my competitor is really beating me on production, then perhaps I'm going to have a production. Here's your target and here's what you're currently working at. And so, I want to know, how far that meter is going towards, are you meeting your production goal or not? So it's focused on single issues, not, grandiose, complicated things, but rather simple kind of things. And of course, it has to have some sort of a simple layout. I mean, if it's too complicated that you can't just glance, if I have to stare at it and go, wait a minute now, what does that mean? I've kind of lost them already. It's going to have to be kind of simple. There's some other features there, but I didn't particularly like those, so I'm going to skip them. There are some rules, some kind of design rules for doing these kind of designs. First one is the keep it simple, stupid kind of thing, the KISS principle, where you're really trying to make this thing work as simple as possible, and don't go overboard and make it complex unless there's a reason to do so. Focus on a specific business problem when you're designing this thing. It makes sense. You have to know the users, okay? And so knowing your bosses and your corporate executives, you need to know, are they technical savvy? Are they not? I mean, it's not going to do any good whatsoever if their admin person, their secretary kind of person, if their admin person is the one who has it on their screen and the CEO doesn't have it on his or her screen, well, then you've kind of lost the game. So you have to make it sure that there's something that they want and they're willing to use. Strategic placement. There's an entire little chart in the book talking about how for visual effect, you really need to have a lot of things up in the upper left-hand corner of a screen. And that's supposed to be the most visual. And then it shows a little matrix of the highest priority, where to physically put things in order to make it, visually grabbing. And obviously the lower left corner, lower right-hand corner is probably one of the poorest spots to put there. Then talk about white space. You don't want to have a dashboard that is just so crammed full of stuff. You got to have some visual white space. And hey, this is not a graphics design course, so I'm just telling you some cool stuff. All right. Now they kind of went over a business intelligence and digital dashboards. We're kind of talking next one on page 656. We're talking about the key performance indicators. There's a lot of good stuff in here. There's one of those quick reference guys. And they just list a few. I'm just going to go through and show you a few. So let's say, for example, that you're the finance and accounting person for the company. So one of your things that could be in your dashboard, and you don't have to have them all. You could just pick one or two. Would be the gross yields, price to earning before interest, earnings per share, budget ratio. If you're personnel, turnover rate, percent overtime, satisfaction, absenteeism. Operations could be, percent out of stock and return rates and, those kind of things. So this is a very good list of KPI, key business, key performance indicators. So key performance indicators are typically the things you would see on a dashboard. And so when you're building a dashboard, you would pick which ones you want. Go have the system go get the data and produce these cool looking little things. The next question on page 658 is, why are we using Excel to do this? And we'll go through their list, and then I'll tell you why I don't really think that's all that valid. Dedicated business intelligence software is rather expensive. We did some work with a company called CISK, and they're a good company, and they do this kind of stuff for a living. And I was quite literally stunned at the pricing that they were providing. Now, admittedly, they were providing custom plugins to some of our databases and pulling data all together. But still, it was a heck of a lot more than I was expecting. If you're a small business kind of person, you're not going to go with SAS and then ask them to do a business intelligence package for you. That's for sure. Minimal cost. Excel costs practically nothing. Most people already have it as part of an Office suite. You probably already have it in your office, and so there's no additional cost in order to do some sort of business intelligence. Most people are familiar with Microsoft Excel. Great. It's very flexible, yes, and you can punch a dashboard out without too much trouble. Now, having said all that, let's talk about the reasons why that's a dumb idea. Pulling business data out of databases is really the responsibility of a database, right? Isn't that what we're talking about? We're talking about big data and pulling data from disparate systems. Perhaps you have an enterprise system of some sort where it's all together. But anyway, you're pulling data. Now, who in your office would you go to pull a bunch of data? Would you go to the database people, or would you go to the spreadsheet people? Let me think. So, most likely, you're talking about going to the database people saying, pull me a dashboard together, okay? Not to the Excel people and say, pull me a dashboard together. Now, I mean, this is an Excel course, and so we're going to do that. But I'm just telling you, in real life, the database people are the ones that are actually going to be doing dashboards. Okay. Whew. All right, so that's the end of the book. Okay, for the rest of this chapter, we're going to be talking about things that are outside the book. All right, the first thing we're going to talk about, which is kind of weird because I noticed that nowhere in our book did we actually use the freeze pane feature, and so I'm going to demo that. What on earth is going on? It's taking doggone slow time today. Okay. So let's say I have a bunch of data. Here's a bunch of data. And I have to scroll this way to be able to see it all, and have to scroll up and down to be able to see it all. Okay. Well, once I scroll down a bit, and then I scroll over, I go, oh, wait, look, here's a 0. What is that? Well, I can't tell anymore, can I? I can't see the heading. So you go, oh, well, that was quiz 4. Wouldn't it be kind of cool if you could lock that first row in? And so you might think, okay, in one of these guys, there's freeze panes. And one of the ones is like freeze the top row. Okay? Now what that basically does, it changes the scrolling. So you see now the top row already stays up there. Isn't that pretty cool? In addition to freezing that, I can also freeze the first column. Well, in this particular case, that doesn't really help me much because all I have is the last name. Okay? Last name by itself, I might have 2 Smiths as an example. So I want to freeze, and by the way, that's mutually exclusive. You can either freeze the top or the first. If you want to do both, you have to use this one here. Okay, now this one caught me a little bit by surprise the first time I used it. But this is a good place to stop for the 15-minute mark, and we'll pick this thing up again in just a few.